When it comes to market gardening or small scale vegetable farming, should you grow in raised beds? Maybe. We'll find out why coming up today on Modern Grower. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the channel. I'm Diego, Diego. And for the past 10 years, I've dedicated my life to market gardening. I'm not a farmer, but I own a store online that sells tools, supplies, and seeds to market gardeners. And I spent the past 10 years making content for market gardeners through my various podcasts. By talking to them and visiting their farms, I've learned a ton over the years. And my goal is to share what I've learned with you so you can be a more successful business owner, because I get how hard it can be to manage a family and run a small business. So if I can give you a little bit of an edge, that's what I want to do. Now, today we're going to be talking market gardening beds, and the concept of edge will come into it. When you look at a lot of farms online, when you pick up a lot of market garden books, one of the first things you'll notice around market gardening, which is based on the French intensive system of growing, are raised beds. Now, when I talk raised beds in a market gardening context, I'm not talking about beds that have a physical barrier around them, metal, wood, stone, and they're filled with soil. I'm simply talking about soil that is mounded up, raising the growing surface up above the native ground level. And that's how a lot of growers grow. There are advantages to that. There's disadvantages. We'll get into both. But no, going into this video, you don't have to do that. You could do it, and a lot of why you would do it depends on your context, your local conditions, and what results you're trying to go after, or what problem you're trying to solve. So, like many things in design, don't arrive at a solution of saying, hey, I'm just going to build raised beds because that's what Jean-Martin Fortier does. He does it for a reason. Unless you have those same reasons, you shouldn't do it. So why should you do it? Well, there's benefits to raising beds. One is you can improve the soil quality and make management a little bit easier. By raising up beds, you take the native soil and you effectively deepen it by piling soil on top. Usually, when you do this, you're deepening the soil and adding a looser, better tilth layer. You're probably adding better soil, or at least better from an agricultural texture quality soil than there was in the native soil. So this is one thing you're doing. You start mounding it up. This is going to give you potentially looser soil, which enables the vegetable roots to really spread and grow. Keep in mind, most annual vegetables, they don't put down extremely deep roots. That's not to say that their roots don't reach deeper depths in perfect soil, but they tend to be more shallow feeders, feeding along the surface. They're very different than trees, which are sending roots down tens of 20, 30 feet or more. So we're at the soil surface. So the looser you can make the soil surface, the more permeable it is, the better. Loosening it all up also helps with water infiltration. It helps with oversaturating the soil, keeping oxygen in the soil. It helps water drain away. It helps microbes and earthworms get into the soil. It's easier for your tools to go through the soil. So in general, a looser soil is better than a stiffer soil in agricultural purposes. Now, this would be the exact opposite in a bedroom where you would want stiffer, not looser, but we're not talking about that type of bed. We're talking about raised beds in soil. So when you build it up, you have control. What are you going to put on top? And usually you're going to add organic matter on top. Organic matter benefits the soil by holding water by providing food for microbes. And when you do this, you're creating an organic matter rich soil. You're probably tilling less and you're helping to build a living soil over time. If you have really hard soil, if you're on a poor subsoil, if you're on a shallow soil, if you're on concrete, building up might be the only option. And to do that, you would use raised beds. Enhanced drainage. This is another reason why people raise beds. If you're in a region that gets a lot of rain, one of the worst things you can have is your garden plot get flooded. Crops that aren't used to living in water don't like their roots sitting in near 100% saturation for a very long period of time. Roots need oxygen. Too much and too wet, roots will rot, plants will get sick. So you need water to drain away. By raising the bed up with loose soil, you help assist the flow of water down to a lower level. Remember, the roots are shallow, so if we raise the bed up, a lot of the roots are up here. The water can drain away and go to the lower spot, which is in between the paths. You can reduce compaction. Concrete, shallow subsoils, instead of going down into it and trying to till it up, work organic matter in, there's all sorts of strategies to decompact soil, but building up is one way to do it. So you get all these advantages. You build up a natural soil, rich in organic matter, you get nice natural drainage, and you reduce compaction. If you're not trying to solve those problems, especially reducing drainage, then you might not want to go the route of building a raised bed because it is a lot of time and effort. We'll get to that. You can just grow at soil surface. There's some advantages to this. You can customize the design. Not that you couldn't infield, but you're not really constrained. You build it yourself. It's easy to do. You build it to size. You can make it compatible with all standard equipment. So if you have a BCS tiller, they're conveniently 30 inches wide. So a lot of people grow on 30-inch beds. If you have some sort of tractor where you can drive it over the bed where the tires fit in between rows, you can standardize your beds to grow so the tractor can drive in between the rows and not on the bed surface. Now, you can do this with flat beds too, but this is just to say that raising beds, it does take some initial work and some maintenance, but it's not absolutely crazy. It's not like building a house or something that's going to take years and years, and there is some flexibility in the design. You can get some production benefits also by doing this. You can help warm the soil by raising it up. You're creating more surface area to be exposed to the sun, and the soil can be warmed a little sooner in the spring. You can use intensive planting on this. Now, again, you could do this at a flat surface too, but this raised soil is often very rich because of the way we construct these. It's loose, so that allows you to plant plants intensively very close together and allows the roots to really spread out into a nice uncompacted soil. So these are benefits going for you on a raised bed. Why wouldn't you want to do it? Well, if you don't have any of the aforementioned problems, if you don't have a drainage problem, if you are in a arid area where actually the opposite of drainage is the problem, where soils dry out quickly, then you don't want to do these things. Raising a bed up in an arid environment speeds up the water loss because you're creating more surface area for wind to hit and the sun to hit, drawing water up. So in my climate in Southern California, raised beds would dry out quicker than actually subsurface beds or beds at ground level. If you're in Quebec or the Pacific Northwest and you're getting a lot of rain, raising it up helps it dry out. So know your context. If you have really rich soil, if you have soil where it's not compacted, there's probably not a reason to go upward. You have some erosion risk when you do this. This creates some maintenance. Even though the beds are only 1, 2, 3, 4 inches high, Heavy rains, you can get some of that soil spilling into your pathways, requiring you to rebuild it up. The issue can also be cleaning up the beds just from walking on the paths, running tools up and down the pathways. You can knock the edges off. It's hard to always get this perfect shape. You're not dealing with something like clay that just wants to mold and stay in shape. You're building with soil, and soil's loose. So even though you want it to come up and be this nice little flat top plateau, some of that soil can slough off, which means you lose a little bit of the edges. Instead of having 30-inch wide bed top, you might only get 28 inches of plantable area because some of that width is sloping down. If you want full 30 inches on top, you probably need to make your bed 33 inches wide or something like that to allow the edges to go out. That requires a little bit more land. Not huge, but it is something to consider. I've definitely visited farms where they didn't do raised beds because they thought the maintaining of the raised beds and maintaining the shape of the raised beds was a hassle. For them, it wasn't worth it. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze. They didn't find any benefit to doing it, and all it was doing was creating work, where when they dropped down to the flat, natural ground level, suddenly there's nothing to fall off. Gravity's all working on the same plane. Soil isn't spilling anywhere. It's all on one level, and that can make things really easy. Drying out. If you're in a warm climate, if you're in a climate that's seasonally warm, raised beds will dry out quicker. I've talked about this a little bit earlier, but that's another big disadvantage. Space considerations, another potential disadvantage. You're going to have pathways in between. And those pathways can vary in width if you have a raised bed because, as I said before, the soil can slough off into the pathways. So you're always kind of constantly fixing those pathways. Where if it's a nice flat surface, the soil's not going anywhere. You can easily define the soil surface. Doing things like broad forking or forking your beds is much easier on a flat surface than a raised surface because the soil can't spill off. If everything is flat, I can easily just go down my bed, go down the exact edge of my bed with a broad fork, loosen that soil up if that's what I choose, how I choose to manage my bed. And I'm not worrying about destroying the bed shape because it's all flat. If I mound it up, then I'm dealing with this whole maintenance of shape. There are some slope limitations given your soil, the tilth and texture. The firmer your soil, meaning the more clay in it, the higher and more steeper you can make the walls of the bed. If you have a sandier soil, well, sand has a lower slope than clay. You're going to have to spread it out. Again, this means that your beds are getting wider and wider, not wider at the top. They might all be 30 inches at the top, but on a sandy bed, you might need 40 inches to get up the mounded shape that you want. There is some transition time to do this and setup. You have to build the beds, and it's not crazy work. Again, it's not building a house or a greenhouse or the most extreme work you can do, but to build a 30-inch wide bed, 100 feet long, and build 50 of them, that's a lot of labor. Either moving a lot of compost and mounding up that soil, because when you mound it up, you're typically getting it from the pathway. You're using a tool like a rotary plow to plow from the center of the bed up into the raised bed. Then you're adding organic matter to it. And this takes time. Where if you're on a flat surface, it's just simply lay out the beds, draw some string lines out or pull some string lines out, add your organic matter to the bed, maybe you till it in, however you choose to manage it, and you're good to go. So these are some considerations. Don't just make a raised bed because you think you have to. Don't just make a raised bed because you think it's better. Ask yourself and observe your situation. What's the problem I'm trying to solve? And what do my conditions dictate? And then arrive at a solution of a raised bed if applicable. And if it doesn't, save yourself the initial work all the hassle, all the maintenance, and avoid it altogether and just grow on a flat surface, and you'll be totally fine. That's all for this one. Thanks for watching. Until next time, be nice, be thankful, and do the work.